Hey guys, today I'm here with another 2022 NHL draft rankings. Before we get started, I'd actually like you to keep in mind that this is a draft ranking, not a mock draft. The teams are just here, just so they are, and I mean you can see like around what players your team can expect on getting. This is not a mock draft. So, for example, I don't have any goalies in the first round here, but for last year, I could have like Jesper Wallstedt in this format coming to the Ducks. Obviously, the Ducks will not take him. Um, they already have John Gibson and Lucas Dostal coming up, but I can still have them going there because it's a draft rankings. Teams don't matter. You know, if it was a mock draft, obviously he wouldn't be going here. But for a lot of these teams, the players do actually make sense, especially around the top. But this is solely just my personal rankings through this draft, and this is the full first round, top 32 picks. So I hope you enjoy it. Let's get started here. So at first overall, it should be no surprise, we have Shane, right? He's the best player in this class. He has 30 points in 22 games with the Kingston Frontenac in the OHL. He did not do that well in the World Juniors, which has concerned a lot of people, and there are people questioning whether he is truly the top prospect in this class. And although he isn't maybe as quite what we thought a couple years ago as a potential like franchise generational player that was almost as good as McDavid, he's not quite there, but I think this is a guy that could maybe be at that Matthews level, and he actually is a very similar player to Matthews. Matthews actually is a player that Shane Wright reminds me of the most. So Shane Wright is a very complete, developed prospect, great two-way player. He's great defensively, and his big thing is he is an excellent scorer. He has an amazing shot. He's a pure sniper, which is a lot like Matthews, who's actually in the second conversation. He's really improved this two-way play. Matthews has become a great two-way player, along with being arguably the best goal scorer in the entire NHL. And I think Shane Wright has shown the potential. I think he could be a top 10 player in the NHL. I think he will, at the very least, be a true number one center to wherever he goes, likely Arizona. Next up here at number 2, we've got Matthew Savoie. And to me, he's a clear number 2. And a lot of mock drafts he is scattered on the top 10. But honestly, I think he easily is the number 2 prospect in this class. In 34 games with the Winnipeg Ice of the WHL, he has 52 points in 34 games. So he does lead, I believe he leads the WHL in scoring. That could change, but he's definitely right at the top and the leader of an absolutely loaded WHL team with the Winnipeg Ice. He also has Conor Geekie, another player who will show up shortly. Mock draft Carson Lambos for last year. Connor McLennan, who's actually developed quite well. I think he was a 5th round pick. They have Zach Benson, who's 2023 eligible. They have an awesome team, absolutely loaded. At one point, I think all the top 5 scorers in WHL all played for the Winnipeg Ice, which is crazy. Savoie's such a good player. As a Hats fan, I really do hope that the Hats can get him at second overall. Savoie's just such a great playmaker, and he's going to be an elite number 1 center in the NHL. Moving on at number 3, we have Brad Lambert. So I still have Lambert at 3, and I think here's why. Obviously, he's not what he was before when it was kind of Wright 1, and then at the beginning it was Savoie 2, then Lambert 3, and then it kind of flip-flopped. Lambert became the number 2 guy, and then Savoie. And Lambert, his production has definitely dropped off, without a doubt, this year, only putting up 6 points in 24 games for JYP in the Liga. With his teammate Joakim Kemell putting up much better numbers, same team. But I think this is largely due he is not getting a lot of opportunities, a lot of ice time, and I think the most important factor is he is just getting extremely unlucky. But when you look at actual talent, I do believe he is the better prospect over Kemell, and he has so much potential. I think he will become an elite winger. Now, he does play center, but he likely won't more so be a winger in the NHL. So he's a guy who oozes with potential, and I think at the end of the day, in the NHL, he's going to be more lucky. He's just super unlucky right now. His talent will show, and he will be an elite number 1 winger. At number 4 in my rankings, I have Simone Nemec. Simone Nemec is the top defenseman here, and I honestly think that he is the best defensive prospect since Rasmus Dahlin in 2015. Drysdale and Byron, I'm a huge fan of both. I'm really good offensive defensemen. And I think Nemec is actually pretty similar prospect to Drysdale, who's Nemec. So the thing with him is he's an offensive defenseman, great elite puck-moving defenseman who Montreal really needs. I think for Montreal, obviously if you get number 1, we're taking Wright, and 2, I would take Savoie, but I think Nemec would be our number 3, since Markov we have not had a defenseman who can even touch the puck. We don't have any puck-moving defenseman. I think Nemec is the solution for that. He's so good with the puck. and a great offensive defenseman. His defense could be improved, but I think with Drysdale, we've seen his defense has improved a lot this year with his true rookie year over the 24 games he played last year. But I think Nemec has a ton of potential to be a Norris caliber elite number defenseman. At number 5, we have Logan Cooley. He's a guy who's risen a lot, and I actually had him 9th in my last mock draft. I believe it was in last September or something. I've always been really high on him, and I think it's starting to show in the mock draft. Craig Button had him at number 2, and I think that he's a top 5 prospect in his class, and you could definitely argue for him to be over Metz and Lambert, and maybe even Savoie. After taking the spot as the number 1 center for the USVP, he just put up the USVP, and this year's 33 points in 22 games for the U.S. National U8 team. So he's putting up amazing numbers, and I mean, he is the best scorer, best player on this USVP team. Tons of potential, and I think the crazy part is he's putting up this amazing offensive production, but he is looked at as a two-way forward. He's a great defensive player, and I think he has all the tools to be a really good elite number 1 center in the NHL. And also, I mean, he's got the two-way game. Very complete player, putting up this offensive production. Very rare to see, and I think he has a ton of potential. Maybe a future Southie winner. And he is kind of, to me, kind of like slightly worse version of Shane Wright. But I think Logan Cooley, excellent player, big fan of him. At number 6, we have Joakim Kemell. Mentioned him earlier. And yes, he's doing great. 18 points, 21 games, with 12 of them being goals with JYP in the Liga. He's a right wing, same team as Lambert. The reason why I have him lower, though, except despite this historic production, it's crazy, he has gotten very lucky. As you see, he has 12 goals and only 6 assists. A lot of those goals were pretty lucky. And I think in terms of just actual skill set, and pure talent, I think Lambert is above Kemell. But his production is nothing to glance at. I think it is super impressive still, which is why I easily have him in the top 10. Definitely make an argument for him to be in the top 5. There are a lot of people who have him above at Lambert, and I think that is warranted with his excellent production. We'll see if he can take it to the NHL, but I think he will still be an elite first liner. He is a very good player. I just don't think that, in terms of actual skill set, he's quite at that Lambert level, and I think Lambert will end up becoming the better player in the NHL. Into the number 7, you have Juraj Slafkovsky. So he put up great production this year with Slovakia. I think he had one assist, so he did not play too. He played all right in the World Juniors. He actually played also last year in Strafter -1 with Slovakia. Same thing with Nemec. But Slafkovsky is just such a good player. He's a big power forward, 6'4", but has so much skill along with that size and speed. He can use his body, and I think these prospects are just really good to me. I really like these prospects. Kind of like Byfield is a big one for me. That possibly kind of similar to that, where you have that mixture of speed, size, and skill. As a lot of these bigger guys, like Tyler Myers, they're huge, but they're bad at hockey. Like Tyler Myers, I think Owen Power, he's big, but he just didn't have that skill set. Where Slafkovsky, he's 6'4", he has that size, but he also has elite skill, plays like someone who's 5'11". So I think he has a ton of potential, a great player, and I think can be one of the league's premier power forwards. Next up at 8, we've got Conor Geekie, and he's a guy who, I mean, I've seen one person have him ranked in the second round, so he's kind of all over the board, because a lot of people are saying, one person said that he has a max ceiling of a third liner. He will be a third liner, but nothing above that, which I have him into the second round. As a lot of people just don't see the potential in him, but at the end of the day, playing with the Winnipeg Ice, same team as Savoie, Geekie has 38 points in 34 games. He's Warren Geekie of the Seattle Kraken. He's his younger brother, and I think that Geekie he has the potential to be a solid first-line center. I do see that potential. He's a great offensive player, and maybe not quite like a Savoie, Lambert, Cooley, but I think he still is a top 10 prospect in this class, but he could definitely move around, and I do actually have to watch him off the market. At number 9, we have David Jiricek, second best defenseman. I think he's easily the second best defenseman in this class. I think he will be a first pairing defenseman in the NHL. This past year, Jiricek had 11 points in 29 games playing with HC Plzeň in the Czechia. So I think he's a really good defenseman, not quite at the Nemec level, but I think he can still be a first pairing defenseman, whether high number 2 defenseman or maybe a lower number 1 defenseman, kind of where I see Jiricek. At number 10, we have Danila Yurov. Yurov is a very interesting prospect. He's kind of all over the board, but this year he has no points in 21 games in the KHL, which is very interesting. But I think what a lot of people are saying is he has the talent. I think he definitely does have the talent to be an elite player in the NHL. The problem is the reason why he's no points is he's not getting any ice time. He's playing 2 minutes a game, so not only do we don't have much film to watch, but he also just does not have the time and opportunity to put up that production. So it makes sense that he doesn't have many points. But I think, as he gets more time, we will start to see he is definitely a riskier pick to make. But I think I still see him as a borderline top 10 prospect. He does have potential, and he's been a guy who's been top 3s, top 5s I've seen. And his production has dropped, and still a lot of people still have him in the top 5. I think he's pretty safe here at 10. It is pretty close. You could have him higher, also a little lower, but I think 10 is a pretty good spot for Europe. Next up at 11, we have Ivan Miroshnichenko. He's a guy that's dropped a lot. Like Slafkovsky, he's a big player. And Miroshnichenko is an amazing shot. He's a sniper, and this past year he's been playing in the KHL, also some time in the VHL, I believe. But his production is not that good. He has 11 points in 26 games in the VHL, where he has played the majority of his games as a big left wing. 5 goals and 6 assists. He has a great shot, but the problem with Miroshnichenko, 11 points in 26 games in the VHL, which I think that is like the AHL for Russia. Pretty good league, but his production is not necessarily there, whereas Europe, I think, is a bit more aggressive. He doesn't have any points, but he's still playing in the KHL, and with the limited ice time, you can't really expect many points to begin. Number 12, we have Denton Tychuk. Probably the most underrated player in this class, to be honest. His production is just amazing. Great offensive defenseman. And so with the Moose Jaw Warriors of the WHL, 30 points, 34 games. Amazing offensive defenseman. That's great production, great totals for Tychuk. And I've seen him all around. I've seen some guys have him late first round. Also, he's been talking top 10. Some people have him maybe even like close to the top 5. That's how good he is. And I think he could make the top 10. I don't think he's quite at Yurchuk's level, but he's going to be a great offensive defenseman. He is offensive though. His defense isn't quite as developed, but if he can get his defense, he's a guy who could be a first-pairing defenseman in the NHL, if not in true number 1 defenseman. We have another guy who oozes with potential, but he does need a little more development in Jonathan Lekkerimäki. He has 31 points in 22 games with the Djurgården's under-20 team in the under-20 Swedish league. And I think this is amazing numbers he's playing with here in the league right below the SHL. He could be playing in the SHL, and I think will probably be in the SHL by the end of the year. But he's a guy who has a ton of potential and could honestly be a first liner. And I think he has the ability to be a top 6 player in the NHL. But I think the problem with Lekkerimäki is he's a little less developed and needs that extra development, which is like why he's still playing in the Swedish under-20 league. At 14, like Tychuk, we have another offensive puck-moving defenseman in Ty Nelson. From our first overall pick in the OHL draft, Ty Nelson's a great player, and he has a lot of points. He's playing with the North Bay Battalion in the OHL, and so far this season, Ty Nelson has 26 points in 31 games. So a little less points, but similar production to Tychuk, which is why I have him in the top 15. Amazing potential. He's great offensively. Just such a good play driver as a defenseman, a true power play quarterback, and I think he has the potential to be a really good power play player. At the very least, he can be like a Tyson Barrie in the NHL. But if he pans out, this is a guy who can kind of be looked at as a Quinn Hughes light. But the problem is he's a defenseman. His defense needs a ton of work to be at the NHL level. 15, we have Seamus Casey, another really good defenseman. He's kind of all around the board. Some people really love him. He's a defenseman for the USVP, playing with the U18 team this year. He has 18 points in 30 games. He's a great offensive defenseman for Casey, and I think he can definitely be a top 4 defenseman in that NHL. Here to number 16, we have Isaac Howard. I had him formerly at number 5. He's not quite there yet, but he still is a great player. He's quite underrated, actually, in my opinion, putting up solid numbers, 36 points in 30 games with the U18 team in the USDP. I do think he can be a solid top 6 forward as a left wing. At 17, we have Marco Kasper. Another one of the guys who I find really underrated. I think he can easily find himself in the top 15. He has 6 points in 24 games with a Rublo PK of the SHL. He's a great center. I think he can be a top 6 center in NHL. When you look last year, Isaac Rosen was 14th, I believe, and he only had like 1 or 2 points around the same games as Kasper in the SHL. Lee South, who had a borderline top 5 prospect last year, ended up falling a lot to the Bruins, 20. But he also only had like a few points in around 20 or so games. But Kasper, I think, doing this 6 points in 24 games He has 4 goals and 2 assists. Pretty impressive. And I think that he could end up being in the top 15 if he continues this production. At 18, we have Elias Salmonson. He's dropped quite a bit. I formerly had him at 8 in my first mock draft. But I still think he has the potential to be a solid top 4 defenseman. Right now, Salmonson is playing in the Swedish U18 league, like Lakaramaki, and he has been putting up 17 points in 22 games. A solid defenseman, pretty good numbers there, but I think he's not playing in the SHL yet, but he does have pretty good potential. At 19, we have Rutger McGroarty. I think it's come to a point where he actually is kind of underrated. People have him late first round, and he was once like the consensus number 4. It was Shane Wright and Savoie and Lambert as the top 3. And then McGroarty was pretty much the consensus number 4. Since then, he has dropped quite a bit, though, and I think there is definitely a valid reason for that. He lost the number 1 center job last year to Logan Cooley, so he's quite at that number 4 level, but I do still believe that Rutger McGroarty is a good player. He is pretty raw, but he does have pretty good potential to be a solid middle 6 center in the NHL. He has 30 points in 24 games, so that's good production, similar to Isaac Howard. Isn't crazy. Not necessarily Cooley level, but I think he still has the ability to make the second center. At 20, we have Philip Nassar. He actually did play in the World Juniors, and he's risen up quite a bit. He has 9 points in 20 games in the top Slovakian league. He plays both wing and center. He's a pretty good player. I do like the production. He is playing in a pro men's league, and he did look alright in the World Juniors. At 21, we have Frank Mazer. He's kind of all around the rankings. To be honest, he's 32 points, 30 games, so slightly less production than McGroarty playing in the USDP. He's a center and winger as well. I honestly see him more as a winger. But he is still, I think, a good player who's not quite what he was before, maybe a year or 2 ago. But I think he is still easily a first-round prospect. At 22, we have Jordan Dumas. And I actually think he is the most underrated player in this class. Matejchuk is number 2. Jordan Dumas is the most underrated. He's such a good player, putting up crazy production this season in the QMJHL. So he's playing with the Halifax, and he's had 47 points in 30 games. Comparable production to Matthew Savoie. Putting up great numbers. The QMJHL, I think, is a bit of a weaker league than WHL and LHL, but it's still a really good league. The fact that Dumas doing this is crazy. I think he has a ton of potential to get into the top 15 of my draft rankings, and I think Dumas will end up going a bit lower, and I actually am going to come up with a mock draft soon, which takes into account team needs and all that. But I think Dumas is still a really underrated prospect, and kind of similar prospect to Xavier Bourgault, who kind of burst into the scene last year with great offensive production in the QMJHL, and selling 20th overall, only selling 19th. 20 to the Oilers, questionably passing up a watch, a really dumb decision. But I think Bourgault is a really good player who can get tops and scored. Same thing with Dumas. Tons of offensive potential with it. 23, we have Noah Östlund. He's another Swedish prospect, and he has 22 points in 16 games in the U20 league. We're going to get to his teammate in a bit as well, but he's a solid center, putting up good production in the U20 league in Sweden. At 24, we've got Cutter Gauthier, really cool name, and I think he could be in the top 20. His production is really good, pretty underrated prospect, as he, I think, is on that level of guys like Isaac Howard, Rutger McGroarty, Frank Mazer, all these guys pretty much in this next half here, probably around 25 to 15. They all are really close, and they could easily move around in future mock drafts. But Cutter Gauthier, so far this year, playing in the USDP with all these guys previously mentioned. So far, Cutter Gauthier has 31 points in 30 games in the USDP with 19 goals, so he can score. He's a center, and I think he does have potential to be really middle 6, whether he plays the center or the wing in the NHL. At 25, Liam Ogren, he's who I mentioned before, Noah Östlund. He may playing with Dijon Gardens. That's where Eklund and Alexander Holtz played in the under 20 Swedish league. He's got 24 points in 14 games, so he does actually have slightly better production than Östlund, and they are Östlund, Gauthier, and Ogren really close, pretty much interchangeable at this point. Ogren's left wing. At 26, we've got Christian Minot, our first overall pick in the QMJHL draft, and he has dropped quite a bit. Not quite Ty Nelson. production hasn't been overwhelmingly good, and although he has been alright, I just don't think that I think he's more of a late first round pick at this point. And I don't think he's going to be able to rise that much. I don't think he's going to fall to the second round. He was the first overall pick in the draft, but he has 15 points in 26 games. Like, that's good as a defenseman, but when you look at other guys, like Matejchuk, Tynason, they're close to a point per game, so they're kind of just like a level ahead of Leno. I do think Leno's still a solid prospect and can be a top 4 defenseman at a shot. 27, we've got Trikazov. He's a Russian, and he's a pretty solid player. He's a center playing in the VHL, 2 points in 11 games. So obviously those stats aren't completely overwhelmingly good, but I think that a lot of people have had Trikazov ranked in the first round, and I think he can be a solid middle six forward. At 28, we've got Wayne Hudson. He's actually a really good prospect. His numbers are really good, and honestly, I could see him rising quite a bit and going a lot higher than I have him ranked right now. So he's 26 points in 30 games with the USDP. He's putting up similar numbers, same as Casey, who's a lot higher than him. So I think Wayne Hudson can easily get into even like the top 20 with this offensive production as a defenseman. He is an offensive defenseman. Probably will need to work on his defense, but I think he can be really good offensive top 4 defenseman. At 29, we've got Kemell Korchinski, another defenseman who has actually been pretty underrated. And I think one of Craig Button or Bob McKenzie had him ranked in the top 15. I don't think he's quite that high, but I do agree that he is a quite underrated prospect. And his numbers, I think, do say that he, in this past year playing in the OHL, or in the WHL, he has 25 points in 30 games with the Seattle Thunderbirds. So pretty similar numbers to Tristan Linnell, or actually quite better. He's almost a point per game, offensive defenseman, like a lot of defensemen in this class. At 30, we have Ryan Chesley. He's dropped a little bit. Another defenseman. His numbers just aren't overwhelmingly good, but he is a defensive defenseman. So I think he'll be a guy, again, could go a little higher, as a lot of the defensemen here are more offensive defensemen, whereas I said Chesley is more defensive-minded. So he, I think, will appeal to a lot of teams who are looking to get a better defensive defenseman. And I think Ryan Chesley, I think that's why Chesley will probably go in the top 25 or top 20. But he only has 5 points to 29 games to USDP. Again, he's a defensive defenseman, so you can't really look that much of points. Points don't really matter for him. But I think with Hudson Korchinski's production, I have to put him higher than Chesley. At 31, we've got Tucker Robertson. Very interesting prospect to me. Really underrated prospect, in my opinion. And he's interesting as he's the only overager here. So he's actually going to be 19 by the time the draft boards roll around. He was passed up on last year's draft. So he is a year older than all those guys, which is a big thing to keep in mind. But he has 41 points in 26 games with the Peterborough Petes in the OHL. 19 of those being goals in 26 games. He's a right wing, and I think these are great numbers for Tucker Robertson. And I think I could kind of see him as a Brett Leeson type prospect, where I don't think he will go in the first round, as we don't typically see overagers go in the first round. But I think he can be he'll go in the mid to early second round. And I see, he is obviously more developed. And with that being said, a lot of these guys will be able to put up these numbers next year, as they will be the same age as Robertson then, which is something you have to keep in mind. Draft year -1, draft year, and draft year +1 are the 3 most important years for development. So Tucker Robertson did not play well last year, which I got passed up, but he has broken out this year, and I think, for me, I have him personally ranked as a first-round prospect, but I do not think he will go in the first round. And finally, to finish things off here at 32, we have Matthew Semenov. I mean, he's a guy who's kind of found his way into the late first round, in this 32-ish range, right towards the end. He has 33 points per 30 games with Kamloops Blazers, so just over a point per game as a right wing. So I think it's pretty good numbers, and I could see him as a late first round, early second round prospect. So there we go, guys. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, please remember to leave a like and subscribe, and comment down below your thoughts on this draft rankings. Again, I would like to mention this is a draft rankings, not a mock draft. The teams do not matter. They're just there just because. I will be doing a mock draft soon, though, so make sure to stay tuned for that, as well as a 2023 draft rankings, my first rankings for that. So make sure to stay tuned on the channel for that. Hope you enjoyed. Thank you for watching. We'll see you in the next one.